Hi, Ditch here. Welcome to my channel. Got to apologise to everybody hoping for an update on the fuel-injected GS550 project. It's not dead, it's just so much has been going on. I just haven't really got around to doing anything further with it. We'll be following up on that pretty soon, I think. Meantime, we've put a new garage up, which has taken up quite a lot of our time, because instead of just paying a building company to do it, we decided we'd manage it ourselves, and we even ended up building the roof ourselves. I'm going to be doing a video about that later at some point, just comparing the cost of, you know, just leaving it in the hands of a building company versus actually managing the project. Not doing it all yourself, but just managing it yourself, because to be fair, you know, spoiler alert, we're looking at a massive cost difference. So it was definitely worth doing, but it used up a fair amount of our time. So haven't really been able to do a lot more on the 550 fuel injection. So yeah, so today's video really came about because I've got this lathe. I'll do a close-up and you'll see what I mean. But I've got this lathe that I've had hanging around for ages. Let's just get a video. Right, so this is the Boxford I purchased a few years ago. It's been hanging around, not done a lot with it, because I didn't really have the space. But now that we're in the new garage, it's got a pretty good spot to live in. So I've been sort of putting it all back together, getting it recommissioned and that kind of thing. And one of the issues that I came across was this tool post. I'm not a big fan of this style, the style of rotating tool post. I mean, they do work, but I really wanted a quick change tool post. So I went on to AliExpress to see if I could find an inexpensive quick change style tool post. After measuring the height between the compound slide and the center of the spindle, which should be the same as the center of the tailstock, that turned out to be about 25.5-ish millimeters. So I went on to AliExpress to see what I could find, and I bought a tool post, one of these multifix type tool posts, and I thought I'd better do a video on it because there just weren't many reviews that I could find online about that specific type of tool post. So I'm going to move the camera and we'll have a look at that in a bit of a close-up. Right, so this is the style of tool post that was in the box with the lathe parts. So this is the simple rotating style tool post. I really wanted a quick change type one, because my other lathe that this one is going to be replacing has also got this type of tool post, and I've been using it for years, and I just thought it's time to move to a quick change style. Incidentally, the lathe also came with this tool post, which was just in the box of bits. Now this is a quick change type tool post, and it's actually not in bad condition. It seems to work quite well. The only problem is it's just hopelessly too big. So the height of this thing is just way too high. Once you put a 16mm tool into that tool holder, it's impossible to get it onto center, because the thickness of this is so high, it's not possible. So I thought, oh, I'll get rid of this. I mean, I could probably sell that for a couple of pounds, put it towards a new one, and then went ahead and ordered off of AliExpress. Now, I decided to go with the multifix style, I don't know, people call it different things, the 40 position multifix style tool post. And these are available in a few different sizes. This is the AA size version max. So they come in an AA size in 3 different versions, and the max is the biggest of the type. So I thought, you know, the center height the tool height is about right for the Boxford lathe, and it's not a bad little package, to be fair, because it comes with a couple of these, well, 4 of these tool holders, and then all the other extra parts. You've got your tool clamping wrench, and then a if I can get it out the packaging, bloody hell. So the idea with these is, comes with this little handy thing for attaching your tools. This size, incidentally, will fit 16mm tools. So that was one of the criteria. I did want to be able to mount 16mm tools, and I have a 16mm tool here. So that's a WNMG style insert, and that will fit, just about fit, into that tool holder. And then this is your locking wrench. So you release that, remove a tool, put a different one on, tighten it up, and because it's the multifix style, you've got a lot of different positions that you can mount your tool. So on the face of it, doesn't look too bad. As I said, this is the max size of this AA type. I couldn't find any reviews of this specific model, and there was limited amount of dimensional information on AliExpress, so I thought I'll give it a go. Now, to be fair, if you had a really small lathe and a very light duty setup, this would probably be okay, but it does have a couple of serious flaws, and for these reasons I'm actually going to be returning this item. So it's going to be a nice little test of the AliExpress returns policy, because I've never had to return anything there before. But yeah, 2 serious issues with this. The first one is these screws, which should be pretty obvious, are just not up to the task. If I rub a vernier on that, yeah, we're looking at 5mm. So 5mm threads, even 4 of them, that's just not enough clamping to hold a tool securely in place. I don't think there's any way that that I'm going to get adequate performance with just 5 little screws. Also, I'll show you once I've removed one of these. They do have quite a long lead on the front. Now, you know what, they always have a bit of a lead on the front because the tip tends to get damaged over time. It tends to mushroom a bit from the clamping forces, so you've got to have some kind of lead. But there's such a long lead on there that if I was to clamp a 16mm tool, I'm pretty much using that whole gap with the tool, and with that long lead, I'm only on 2 threads there, which is just not enough. So a different screw, a bigger thread in there might make this a bit more usable, but as it is, just like this, there's no way I would clamp a 16mm tool in that and even really attempt to take a cut. If you compare that to one of these tool holders, you've got 8mm screws holding your tool in place, and there's enough space to get the full thread depth before you actually touch your cutting tool. So that's one issue that I had with this. Another issue is, and I'll disassemble this so you can see, it's actually quite easy to get the thing apart. I think that comes off first, and then this little plate, and then you can just pull that out. So that's the clamping band, and you can see this. It's not terribly made. It does look reasonably well made, but when you offer it up to the tool, and I'll try and show this, but it's difficult on camera, but there's quite a lot of movement on that. Now, in the unclamped state, that shouldn't be moving at all. So it looks like that part is reasonably well made, but that part isn't a very good fit. This serration here doesn't really fit very well onto that. So you end up with quite a lot of movement, which is why when you clamp it in place, you're not going to have any kind of precision location. The height of your tool is going to be moving all the time, and it's not going to be clamped very securely. In fact, that angle of these teeth is quite different to the angle of these teeth. So it's just really the very tips that are actually making contact. So I personally wasn't happy with that. So definitely not fit for purpose, unfortunately. Might be okay if you've got an extremely small lathe and it's doing very, very light duty work, but I wouldn't fit that onto my little Boxford. Even though it's a small lathe, I do expect it to be able to take a reasonable cut, and I wouldn't use that at all. So that one's going back. So instead, I've actually purchased this one. That one came from Chronos. So this is the one they actually recommend for the Boxford lathes. It's the T51. So they don't call it that, but the picture on the website showing the dimensions is exactly the same as the one on AliExpress for the T51. All the dimensions are the same. So this one, definitely better suited to the Boxford. If you look at the tool holders, they also have M8 screws, and there's enough space there to get a 16mm tool in without losing any of the actual thread engagement. So we've still got a full thread on that. And it's also not terribly badly made. I mean, the finish is a bit rough in places, but it is ground, which is great. But more importantly, if you look at the fit of that tool holder, once it's in place, there's absolutely no movement at all on that in the unclamped state. So you know that's going to locate really well, and you know that's going to be nice and rigid when it's clamped in place. That said, though, comes with 3 tool holders. 2 of them feel fantastic. One of them has actually got a tiny bit of movement on it, which isn't brilliant. But fortunately, these tool holders that came with the other tool post, they also fit, and they have 0 movement on them. So that means I've got some spare holders. Incidentally, though, these 3 are all slightly different. If we look at the thickness of this lower section, that's about 8-ish, and that one is about 7, and then that one is about 8. So that one has a millimetre smaller section at the bottom than these other 2. Doesn't matter really, but it is a bit weird. And then on top of that, these screws are all screwed in all the way, and that one is clearly longer because the grub screw under here is longer. So that one's got a longer grub screw, and that one's got a thinner section at the bottom. So there are none of these 3 are actually identical to each other. So I don't know how they purchase these. Maybe it comes with 2 and then they supplement the other one and it comes from a different source. I don't know. But it seems like this type of tool post is made in India, whereas the multifix type, this type, the cheap knockoff, is made in China, because you can get these on AliExpress. I was unable to find this type, this T51, on AliExpress at the moment, but there were plenty available from India. So I suspect China versus India. And unfortunately, in this instance, India wins. So yeah, going forward, that one will be going back, this one will be going on, and I've at least got another 2 spare tool holders. And when you compare this, which is a much better quality one actually, the dimensions are pretty much the same, and I've even swapped these components out between them and they work perfectly well. So I'll keep that one. Gives me a bunch of spares because all the parts are interchangeable, but you can clearly see the height difference when you compare the 2 side by side. That one, definitely better for the Boxford. That one's definitely too big. It's just almost impossible to get your tools onto center height unless you use really small 12mm tools, and I would much prefer to be using 16mm tools. So yeah, just a short video because there are very few reviews of this T51 on YouTube, I noticed, and no reviews of this particular model. So if you want to find this one, there are on AliExpress. It's the AA size, and this particular seller sells them in 3 different styles. One's a Pro and one's a something, I don't know. And the biggest one, the Max, is this particular one. They do have the disclaimer on their page that says that they're independently developed and that they will not accept tool holders from other brands, which is unfortunate. Even more unfortunate that it doesn't seem to accept tool holders from its own brand. So I wouldn't even bother with that unless you've got a very tiny little lathe. And these little screws are just, when you compare them to that, or even that, they're just obviously not substantial enough. So I wouldn't buy this at all, especially not this style that accepts the 16mm cutting tools, because there's no way you'd be able to utilize a 16mm cutting tool with this sort of floppy arrangement. So yeah, going forward, we'll be fitting this one. And then, as I say, a couple of other videos coming up, I'll be installing a DRO on this lathe. But meantime, thanks for watching.